With football season upon us now, there's a lot happening in the news, so be sure to subscribe to my other channel, JG9 News, where I give you up-to-the-minute updates on everything happening in the NFL in a completely relaxed, unscripted format, and I give my thoughts on everything taking place around the National Football League today. And now, on with our feature presentation. In terms of guys who are probably never going to make the Hall of Fame, I think one of the best receivers there ever was had to be this man right here, Harold Jackson. Jackson was drafted by the Los Angeles Rams in the 12th round of the 1968 NFL-AFL draft, and 12th round picks were absolute crapshoots back then. As of the 28 players selected, 19 of them never even so much as played a single down in professional football. Jackson, however, was not one of those 19. He was so much more than that, as by the time his career ended, he established himself as one of the greatest receivers in the history of the sport. He was a 5-time Pro Bowler who led the league in receiving yards twice, leading it in 1969 and 1972 with the Philadelphia Eagles. He led the league in receptions in 1972. He led the league in receiving touchdowns with 13 in 1973 as a member of the Los Angeles Rams. Despite bouncing around a bunch of different teams, when all was said and done, Jackson ended his 16-year career with 579 catches for 10,372 yards and 76 touchdowns, including a first-team All-Pro nomination and a second-place finish in the MVP voting in 1973. By the time his illustrious career ended after the 1983 season, Jackson ranked 7th all-time in receptions. The only 6 players ahead of him were Charlie Taylor, Don Maynard, Raymond Berry, Charlie Joyner, Harold Carmichael, and Fred Biletnikoff. And I bring that up because all 6 of those guys are in the Hall of Fame. By the time his career ended after the 1983 season, Jackson was one of just 3 receivers in the over 60-year history of the league to have over 10,000 receiving yards, and his 10,372 yards ranked 2nd in NFL history, only behind Don Maynard. And by the time Jackson's career ended in 1983, his 76 touchdowns ranked tied for 7th in NFL history, with every man tied or better than him by that point minus Art Powell, who had all of his production in the AFL, being in the Hall of Fame. You could make a legitimate argument that Harold Jackson belongs in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and I'm not going to fight you on that. I would pound the table for him and would have no problem whatsoever if he gets in via the senior committee, because he deserves it, and was a very good receiver for a very long period of time that was at the top of the sport compared to his peers. Harold Jackson was a great player. And if you like hearing more about the great players of the past, then this is the channel for you, because we talk about all things weird and wacky in the NFL every single day on this channel as we honor some of the greatest players in the history of the sport. So if you like that sort of stuff, then be sure to hit that like button down below, subscribe, and turn on that notification bell so you don't miss a single video that we post on the channel. Thanks in advance for your support. However, while Jackson was an incredible player, and a man who should be in the halls of canon today, even despite the logjam at wide receiver that has developed over the years, he might not be best known for anything that happened while he was playing. Sure, he had multiple seasons leading the league in receiving yards, and had some very dominant years in the 1970s, but we are not here to talk about any of that today. Rather, we're here to talk about a bizarre incident that took place during his 4-year tenure as a wide receiver on the New England Patriots, as in his 3rd of 5 teams that he played for. Because during his first season there, in 1978, he got injured in the weirdest way possible. Jackson was fairly durable, playing in 208 games over his career, and playing in every single game from 1969 to 81. So the man knew how to stay healthy and stay on the field, which is why it's ironic that his biggest injury came from someone rooting for him, and a fan of all people. Seriously, a Patriots fan injured Harold Jackson while Jackson was playing for the Patriots, and we're going to break that down today. Because this is the story of the bizarre time that a Patriots fan injured his own freaking player. Before I talk about the actual incident in question and just how insane it was, we need some context to understand not just how well this man right here, Harold Jackson, was playing, but how well his team was playing alongside him. The year is 1978, and after 5 seasons with the Los Angeles Rams, including his most recent 1977 campaign where he made the Pro Bowl, Harold Jackson was traded to the New England Patriots, with the Patriots desperately needing a number 2 receiver after a preseason injury to Darryl Stingley in one of the most infamous and devastating hits in the history of the NFL. When Jackson arrived in New England, as he said, there was some pressure at first. The fans were saying, "Harold, you've got some big shoes to fill." I was sorry to come under those circumstances having Darryl hurt. Darryl was a super receiver, but I didn't come to fill Darryl's shoes. I can only fill Harold Jackson's shoes. And just like that, the 32-year-old receiver was tasked with trying to do what he was able to successfully do just about every year he was with the Rams: guide his team to the postseason, which for the Pats would be just their second playoff appearance in the post-merger era. And safe to say, Jackson lived up to those expectations in year 1 and then some. During that 1978 campaign, Jackson had 37 receptions for 743 yards and 6 touchdowns, finishing second on the team in receptions and receiving yards behind Stanley Morgan, and leading the team in receiving touchdowns. The Pats had the 4th best offense in the league from a points scored standpoint, and had the number 1 offense in the league from a yardage standpoint. And while there were many reasons for this, from the strong running game with Sam Cunningham, Andy Johnson, and Horace Ivory, to the emergence of Pro Bowl tight end Russ Francis, Harold Jackson was an absolutely instrumental part in that. From his 106-yard, 2-touchdown performance against the San Diego Chargers in Week 4 in a 28-23 win, to his 118-yard, 2-touchdown performance against the New York Jets in Week 9 in a dominant 55-21 onslaught, to a whole bunch of other performances in between, Harold Jackson was the real deal, with his numbers made even more impressive by the fact that he was acquired just days before the regular season started. So he had no real time to learn the playbook and truly get acclimated to the offense. And thanks to Jackson playing lights out in his first season in New England, the Patriots found themselves in an interesting position. Through 14 weeks, the Patriots were sitting at 10-4, leading the AFC East and having the second best record in the conference. Sitting right behind the Patriots with a 9-5 record were Don Shula's Miami Dolphins. However, the Patriots own the tiebreaker over the Dolphins, seeing as the Patriots entered Week 15 with a 5-1 divisional record, and the Dolphins entered with a 4-3 divisional record. And seeing as even though the Pats and Dolphins had only met once thus far, the Patriots defeated the Dolphins 33-24 down at the Orange Bowl in Week 8, in a game where Harold Jackson, once again, played great, recording 70 yards and leading the team in receptions and receiving yards. This meant that for the Patriots, if they could defeat the Buffalo Bills in Week 15, then they'd be 11-4. They'd be 6-1 in the division, with Miami unable to catch them on that front, since the best they could do would be 5-3, and with Miami unable to catch them head-to-head, seeing as the Pats won the first game. In other words, if the Patriots could win this game right here, this game against the Buffalo Bills, then they would win the AFC East, and would not only clinch a playoff spot for the second time in franchise history in the post-merger era, but for the first time ever, they would win the AFC East, and would win the division for the first time since they won the AFL East in 1963 with a 7-6-1 record. It would also ensure the fact that the Patriots would host a playoff game for the first time in franchise history. Long story short, beat the 4-10 Buffalo Bills, a team with nothing to play for, and a team that you beat earlier in the season, and it's quite possibly the biggest win in franchise history at the time. Now, was this game pretty? Not by any stretch of the imagination. Heck, the Bills led it 24-21 late in the fourth quarter. However, at the end of the day, style points mean nothing. All you have to do is win the game. And sure enough, after the Bills took an intentional safety to make it 24-23, thinking that New England wouldn't have enough time to drive down the field again at the field goal range, that's exactly what the Patriots did. As with just 8 seconds left, kicker David Posey made the biggest field goal of his life, booting a 21-yard field goal to win the game 26-24, which not only gave the Pats the win, but gave the Patriots the AFC East title for the first time in franchise history. To clinch it like that, and in front of your home fans, yeah, that's really special. Pats fans hadn't had a whole lot to cheer about over the first 2 decades of their franchise's existence, but for the first time in forever, they were on top. They were going to the playoffs. They were going to play another game at Schaefer Stadium, and they had a legitimate chance to make it to, and possibly even win the Super Bowl. And because this was the 1970s, what did the fans do after the game? As you can probably guess, they rushed the field. In their jubilation and in their excitement, they hopped the walls and ran down the stairs and celebrated with the players. Security was no match for them. The turf, understandably, was completely destroyed afterwards by the excited and drunken fans, with one fan even going as far as running to the 50-yard line and taking his pants off. Not sure what compels you to do that, and not sure if he ended up on some sort of list afterwards, but yeah, that's what we were dealing with here. Not exactly the most rational bunch, especially when drunk and when high on adrenaline. And it was at this moment where the Patriots, despite winning the battle, would lose the war. Because it was at this moment that the one thing that you never want to see happen during a field storming ended up happening. That's right, Harold Jackson, their star wide receiver, and one of the biggest reasons for the team's success, was caught in the crossfire. Because this fan ended up stepping on Harold Jackson's toe. Now, we don't know how exactly this happened. Maybe the fan was jumping for joy and didn't see where he landed or something along those lines. Maybe the fan was just running at full speed in the process of running to midfield or wherever he wanted to be. He didn't realize where he was going, and he stepped on Harold Jackson's toe. There is a ton of possibilities here, although we do know 2 things. Number 1, this was a complete accident. The fan was not trying to do this. But number 2, Jackson was in pain. Jackson, who had stayed healthy the entire season and hadn't missed a game, was in serious pain after this game right here, with Jackson saying on the incident, it was either stepped on or kicked. And this wasn't just a minor knock or anything like that. This was a broken toe. Harold Jackson seriously broke his toe because a fan wasn't watching where he was going and stormed the field and ended up injuring him in the process. Somehow, this man right here, Harold Jackson, had a pretty good sense of humor about this in the days following the injury. Said Jackson, it could have been worse. If David Posey had missed the field goal, man, I might be in traction somewhere in a hospital bed. But despite Jackson's good sense of humor, it couldn't take away the pain that he was feeling in his foot, which is kind of important for a receiver who needs to run quickly and make cuts. It's very difficult to do that with a broken toe, as anyone who has had a broken toe can attest to. Heck, it's difficult to walk with a broken toe, let alone run and be a professional football player. Even if Jackson somehow recovered from this injury and played tough, he wouldn't be at full strength or anywhere close to full strength, and understandably so. The fan was celebrating the fact that his team was in the playoffs, and ended up delivering a big blow to his team's chances in the playoffs in the process. The receiver brought in, because the previous guy got injured, was now injured himself. All because of one careless fan after the game. Now, amazingly enough, when it came to the man who played for this team behind me right here, Harold Jackson was somehow able to play the following week in the regular season finale against the Miami Dolphins, even though that game meant absolutely nothing. I don't know why he played that game, but seriously, Harold Jackson, despite a broken toe, was able to come back and play that game and play the team's divisional round playoff game against the Houston Oilers, a game in which the Patriots lost. However, he was very clearly not the same player, as despite his toughness, he didn't do a whole lot of anything across the final 2 games of the season if we count the final regular season game and the playoff game. He only had 3 receptions across those 2 games. This was a man who was just a few years removed from leading the league in receptions, and was a man who was routinely putting up 4 catches a game at times with the Patriots. And yet, just 3 catches over the final 2 games of the season with the broken toe, which he's not going to make excuses for it, but you can clearly tell that the toe was bugging him, and it's not hard to see why. The Harold Jackson incident shows the dangerous sides of court stormings and field stormings. Sure, they can be fun and enjoyable, and heck, I've been a part of a few of them over the course of my life, albeit in college and never at a professional game, since those don't happen at the pro level anymore. But they can also be wildly dangerous and can lead to chaotic moments where bad things happen. And what happened to this man right here, Harold Jackson? Well, that was a prime example of field storming gone wrong. Because even though the Patriots won the division, they lost their wide receiver in the process with a broken toe. It was a jump for joy gone horribly wrong, or a run onto the field gone horribly wrong. Either way, it went horribly wrong. Because as great of a receiver as Harold Jackson was, the most infamous moment of his career, through no fault of his own, had to be this 1978 incident, which I shall hereby refer to as the Boston Toe Party. Get your official Jaguar Gear 9 merchandise by going to jj9shop.com, and be sure to like and subscribe, as it really helps the channel out a lot. Join me every Wednesday night where we'll play NFL Trivia for cash prizes at 9 p.m. Eastern over on Twitch. To learn more about the history of college football, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 8. To learn more about the history of Major League Baseball, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 7. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.